Okay, here we are changing our fuel injectors on our Hyundai Elantra Touring. First thing we need to do is lift off this fuse box. We need to disconnect the fuse to the fuel pump so that there's not gas just spewing out. We need to empty that fuel line. So on the cover you can see the chart. Number 6 says F pump. Find where the 6 is and then match it up. I had already taken the fuse out, but that's where the fuse was with the little tongs it comes with. So we removed that, then turn the engine over and just make sure it doesn't start. So and we hadn't driven the car since last night, so there's no fuel in the line. Next, you can see the loosened bolts to take off that cover. And once we remove the cover, then we'll be able to see where the fuel injectors are located. It's a lot different on the Hyundai Elantra Touring versus the regular Elantras. This is the hatchback. They stopped making it in 2012. On the regular Elantras, it's before the oil area. And this is kind of lodged in between here. So those are where the 4 injectors are connected. There's bolts holding it down as well. And a fuel line that we'll need to disconnect as well. That's where the fuel line connects. So we're just loosening those nuts to remove the fuel line. We put a little towel down just because you will drip some fuel. Just kind of eliminate it being all over the engine. And so I didn't find a lot of videos for our car, or any videos actually, so that's again while I'm making this one, because it was a lot different from the regular Elantra. Okay, so once those are loosened, next, just kind of wiggle that off. And it did slide right out very easily. And just kind of move it out of the way. A little bit of gas got on the towel, that's it. Next we have to remove the, fuses, I don't know what they are, but. So he found that we had to push in, kind of like a little button to get over a knob, and then pull it up. We realized that we did not have to remove only the first one closest to your left when you're looking at the engine. That's the only one we really needed to remove to get it out of the car, but we didn't realize that until we'd taken it all out. So save yourself trouble, just do the first one, because they're all connected. But we did struggle with this a little bit. It's very tight in there. So I just want to save you the trouble of going through what we went through. And so he's still just kind of wiggling around with that, getting those out. Okay, so at this point, we just need to remove that one at the end. And then there are 2 bolts. We were just talking about this piece that's in front of it. So once the bolts are loosened, and he used a 12 millimeter again for these, same as on removing the plastic cover at the beginning. And it was a 10 millimeter to take off the nuts on the fuel line. Okay, so those bolts are removed. So now he's just wiggling out the fuel injectors. And just, once that's removed, just kind of keeping it tilted up as much as you can on that right side, just because there is fuel in there. You will leak a little bit of it, but we just are trying to not leak a lot of it. You'll see us drip it though, or him. Okay. So now was taking out the old fuel injectors. There's little like clamps that he just used a screwdriver to kind of pry off. Those are what keep the fuel injectors in place, so you don't want to break them. Just kind of wiggle them off. Pretty easy. And then once all 4 of those were removed, it was just a matter of taking out the old fuel injectors. And there was a little bit of wiggling and shimmying it out. Didn't just pop right out, which is a good thing, I guess, they need to be in there snug. So once he got all 4 of those out, we're able to move on to the next step. We did just change our fuel pump, and it made a huge difference in our gas mileage. Again, our car is high miles. It's over 175,000 miles. It's been all over the country, and we have never changed this. So he's putting on a gel lubricant. It was a WD-40 gel lubricant. Some of the other videos I watched were from, I think they're called Auto Repair Guys. They're in California. They used white lithium, WD-40 white lithium. This one we had on hand. It said it worked well on rubber, plastic, as well as metal, and it was could withstand very low and very high heat. So these clip on. You'll hear them clip. Again, you can actually attach them, the gray piece to the blue piece, before putting it into the little fuel thing. But you just want to make sure you hear a clip. Those little metal pieces are what hold the fuel injectors into that big black piece there. So you don't have to worry about them coming out like that. And it was around this point where we realized that we never had to take out, we didn't have to take the struggle in the engine cavity while we were taking out the connections. But anyways, and these will clip on also. You'll see and feel the little nubs once they're on completely. And you just have to make sure you get them in the little groove that he's lining them up with. And that little groove holds them in place. And you'll feel they'll be very snug. He just was kind of going back and making sure they're as snug as could be. And again, putting on some of that gel lubricant. This just protects from rust and erosion. Okay, so now it's time to get it back in the engine. Pretty much just slid right in. Again, the location is very different on the Elantra Touring, this hatchback version. That's why we decided to make a video, just to kind of show what we learned, at least. Might help other people. And I'll put the part number in our description as well. So once you got those lined up, pop them right in. And then the holes where the bolts go were lined up, so we knew that they were all in the right spot. Okay, so he's just attaching that last one on the injector, connection for the injector, and then putting in those two bolts. Okay, and so once he gets those tightened up, and again, it's a 12 millimeter wrench for the bolts. Okay, so he's just making sure that those bolts are completely tightened as much as could be. He did it with his hands first, and then just using a wrench to really make sure they're secure. And then after that, just really making it sure it's secure. Those are tight. They're not going anywhere. Safety first. Okay, then connecting that piece back together on the end. And connecting the fuel pump. Or the fuel line. So getting that on, and then just putting the two nuts back on. And more tightening. So this is definitely on there very secure. And the reason we did our fuel injectors was, like I mentioned, we just changed our fuel pump about a week and a half ago, which has been amazing. But we're still getting some, when we fill the tank up at the gas station, it gets still a little sputtery and was not taking off cleanly. So we just decided to change the fuel injectors as well, since they had never been changed. We've had the car for 10 years. So a lot of these little things are it's just time now to do them. And I'm sure there's other things that we'll need to fix as well. It's like, I feel like it's once you do one thing, then you realize everything else needs to get done also, but we'll get there. Okay, so now I just am putting back that fuse. Since everything's connected back on the injectors, this is the last thing to do to make sure the car will run. And I put the little tongs back in the cover and replace the cover. And we had already put back on the engine cover as well. At this point, you can hear that it sounds rough still. Like it's getting gas.
Still kind of rough, but maybe it just takes a minute.
Still idling very high. I just kind of wanted to leave that sound in.
Yeah, it started pretty rough.
So you can hear it. Maybe someone has a suggestion.
Okay, the check engine light is still on, but it did start.
So at this point, we had driven it around the block.
Mm-hmm. I think it's just me with the ignition.
It's definitely idling.
Sounds better.
Lower.
Our light is still on, but it sounds a lot better.
Hope this helps.